Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media. Your host, Ryan Coyle, streaming this here on Twitter and YouTube tonight on Pick Swap Media. A little after 6:30. This is a pretty huge kind of show, pretty huge episode for the future of college basketball going forward at one of the biggest institutions in the sport. Sunday night, there began to have some rumors surface that John Calipari was potentially leaving Kentucky for Arkansas. And just a few days later, he hasn't officially been named the head coach at Arkansas yet. But as of this afternoon, he released a statement saying that he will be leaving Kentucky. And so this episode is kind of just go how he got here and now some potential candidates to fill that job for arguably the biggest job in all of college basketball. When you look, though, at the crazy domino effect of how he got here, it all started with SMU probably a little bit prematurely firing Rob Lanier, their coach, after going 20-14, I believe the record was, in just his second season at SMU. And with SMU moving to the ACC, maybe they felt they could get a bigger name, maybe a little bit more of a high-profile coach. Lanier's now the head coach at Rice. But Andy Enfield jumps up the opportunity. He might have been on thin ice out there at USC a little bit after a really down, disappointing season this year. He jumps at the opportunity to go to SMU, who gives him a nice payday, and with a chance to go to the ACC and coach in there with USC, obviously now no longer in the Pac-12. They're going to the Big Ten. That's a tougher job. I think ACC, he might be a little bit more suited for success. He's shown the ability to really recruit. If he can recruit the state of Texas, they're going to have a pretty good shot, I think, to compete there in the ACC and make SMU basketball a program to maybe be reckoned with in that conference. But he leaves there. That opens up the spot at USC. Eric Musselman jumps at that opportunity, leaves Arkansas to go to USC. That opens up the Arkansas job. And then it was rumored the top two guys that they went after, Jerome Tang and Chris Beard. Both those guys said no. And I kind of agree with that. Ole Miss to Arkansas, I think Arkansas is a step up, but not that big of a step up. I think Chris Beard, if he has a good year at Ole Miss this year, or potentially at a bigger school, which we'll get into in a little bit, will have an opportunity to get another job if he wants to. Like I just kind of alluded to, maybe he goes to Kentucky. Obviously, he wouldn't be going for a bigger opportunity after that. But in the same regard, if he stays at Ole Miss and one of these bigger programs has a down year this year and Ole Miss makes the tournament and people don't have a problem with kind of his past and his history, he's going to get another opportunity at a bigger school somewhere else because all the guy does is win. And then Jerome Tang going from Kansas State to Arkansas, is it really that big of an upgrade? I mean, he's another guy where if he has another good few years at Kansas State, I could see him getting one of these kind of top shelf jobs. He's shown in just 2 years that he's a really good head coach. So that leaves us with the Arkansas opening. And then John Calipari, he said it himself today. He said, I think just after 15 years, it's time for a change of scenery for me. Potentially, and then just for the program itself to hear a new voice. It just felt like, especially after losing that game to Oakland in the NCAA tournament, I was saying I didn't think he would be the coach for them. And then there was discussions, a week went by, and then Kentucky AD Mitch Barnhart comes out and says, we're going to, after discussions like we do every single season here at Kentucky with Coach Cal, after the season concludes, we're going to roll ahead with him with next year. And they have another 6 top 100 recruits coming in. I assume they'll be pretty active in the portal as well. But a few more weeks go by, a week goes by, whatever it is, and he decides, you know what, I'm going to jump at this opportunity at Arkansas. Definitely a step down in terms of the overall job. Kentucky, I think he put right up there. Duke, North Carolina, maybe even UConn now after winning back-to-back national titles. I think Villanova is up there. It's still kind of baffling to me how Kyle Neptune's a coach after 2 NIT runs, no NCAA tournaments. But Kentucky's right up there with the best of the best in the entire sport. But Calipari is apparently getting a nice 5-year, around $40 million contract there from Arkansas, and he's going to get a huge endorsement with the NIL deals as well. So a great opportunity for him. You assume 6 guys that he's got coming in. I assume at least 5 of them will follow him to Arkansas, if not all of them. Maybe 1 or 2 wants to actually stay at Kentucky, and they went to Kentucky for Kentucky. But, there's a good chance that they follow him to Arkansas. Arkansas does not currently have a scholarship player on the roster, which is pretty just wild to say. But they'll obviously be active there, getting some of these new recruits in, and then as well as attacking the portal once Cal officially gets announced. Hopefully that happens tomorrow, and then we kind of see these rosters start to take form. So John Calipari, I think it's awesome though that the fact that he does leave and stay in the SEC. It's kind of just like Chris Beard going from Texas Tech to Texas. He stays in the conference. Ed Cooley going from Providence to Georgetown stays in the conference. They're going to have to play each other probably twice next year. So just an awesome kind of array of dominoes that all led to this. And who would have thought it would have been Rob Lanier getting fired from SMU? He goes to Rice, and all things are off and running after that. Musselman, Enfield, Calipari. So now the big question is, who replaces John Calipari at Kentucky? And you can say what you want about him. I think that what he said today was best, where sure, you could definitely do a lot worse than John Calipari, and he might have underperformed at times, especially 3 of these last 4 NCAA tournaments. Doesn't even win a game, loses in the first round, hasn't made the Final Four in quite some time, I believe since 2015, only won 1 national title in 2012. But he did accomplish a lot there. It just might have been time for a change. It's just like a marriage, like sometimes where, you love the person, you love what they've done for you in your past, but it might just be better off moving forward in a new direction and just having a little bit of change in life. Calipari's 65, if he wants to, probably has another good 10 years of coaching ahead of him if he wants to stay in the game that long. So maybe he can build Arkansas into something, win them a national title, get them to a Final Four. That would really cement his legacy as one of the more impactful figures in college basketball. I'm not going to say one of the greatest coaches just because I think he's underperformed with all the talent that he's had at times, but impactful, like in terms of getting these recruits, the kind of like one and done method that he really birthed into college basketball. I felt like I remember first coming up with that, like John Wall, Eric Bledsoe, DeMarcus Cousins team. So this is a big kind of step in a new direction for Kentucky. And where do they go? But John Calipari, and also kind of going off what I was saying about him, just the guys that he sends to the NBA routinely and changes these kids' lives. That's going to be an attractive thing at Arkansas. And they're reportedly giving him around $5 to $6 million a year in NIL money to really fill out their roster and shape it how he wants. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't bring most of his staff with him, especially his lead assistant, Orlando Antigua. He's known as one of the kind of better recruiters and Cal's kind of right-hand man. Maybe he brings in a few other guys that weren't on the staff this year in terms of changing some stuff up for X's and O's. But it was a really fun Kentucky team to watch this year in terms of the style they played. At the end of the day, they just couldn't defend, and they couldn't really execute that much in these close games down the stretch, and that's what really hurt them. And eventually had them get knocked out of the tournament in the first round by 14 seed in Oakland when Jack Golke hit 10 threes, I believe it was. So just an insane run for Cal at Calipari. Like I said, he might have left some meat on the bone, but 15 seasons at Kentucky with a 410 and 122 record, won 6 SEC tournament titles in 2010, 2011, 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018, won 1 NCAA tournament title in 2012, and he had 32 NCAA tournament wins. So, obviously a very impressive resume, but when you're at Kentucky, the expectation is kind of like, I'll compare it to now with what Kalen DeBoer is walking into at Alabama. You're filling the shoes of Nick Saban. There's going to be pressure on there. So there was a ton of pressure on Cal and a ton of criticism of him for his failing to live up to the standards kind of at Kentucky over the past 10 years or so after he got off to that rockin' hot start. It kind of slowed down a little bit in terms of winning and overall success. So whoever steps into this job, you're taking on a obviously huge job and a lot of pressure from the get-go. So we'll go into kind of what's next now after Calipari leaves Kentucky for Arkansas. Who does Kentucky turn to now? There's obviously a lot of big names that are going to be floated out, some of the biggest names in the sport, whether it's, people that have coached at Kentucky before and have a little bit of history there, coaches at major programs now, maybe looking for the next challenge in their coaching career. I think there's no better place to start than at the top with Dan Hurley at UConn. I put it at a less than 5% chance of him going there. I think the kind of fascination of going to Kentucky, or the mystique behind it, obviously the dollars and cents, Kentucky can offer a lot more money with that SEC money than UConn can. But at the same time, Dan Hurley has proven he doesn't need the big NIL money, the big boosters, the overwhelming resources to get it done. He just won back-to-back national titles, the first time since the mid 2000s anyone has done that in college basketball. He said it himself. Like, I've turned down and I haven't recruited, top 5, top 10 recruits in my time at UConn if I believe that they were a culture killer or wouldn't fit what our team does. You look at a guy like Stephon Castle last night. He's playing with arguably the biggest motor on the court, running all over the place. He's a McDonald's All-American, and he just fit exactly what that Connecticut team needed and did every night. Like, I don't think Dan Hurley would really change much if he went to Kentucky. Maybe he gets some more talented guys, but the way that he built his team and played with the system, sure, he's going to get top 100 recruits at UConn a lot, and especially now with them winning, more people are going to want to go there and want to play there. But why leave what's working for you for another step? I mean, if he really wants to and he thinks that can actually catapult him into being into that kind of GOAT conversation by the time his career is done. He's already got 2 national titles. I believe he's 53. If he goes to Kentucky and he thinks, all right, by the time I'm 70, I could see myself winning another 5, 6 titles here. Sure, but I just don't see him leaving. I think he really, at this point, is UConn through and through, and I think he wants to be like a Coach K, like a John Wooden, someone who stays at that job for their entire career, wins multiple national titles, and cements himself as one of the best coaches in all of college basketball. So Dan Hurley is probably at the top of the list. I assume he's getting a call today or got a call today already at this point, but I don't see him going there. Another name that has been kind of floated around, and obviously he had a connection to the program before. Then he coached at the biggest rival in Louisville. That's Rick Pitino. He left in Kentucky in 1997, I believe, and he went on and he coached in the NBA for a little bit. And he talked about it on Part of My Take a few weeks ago, where he said, I believe Dick Vitale told him, like, if you left Kentucky, you'd be the most, or if you stayed at Kentucky for your entire career, you'd be the winningest coach in college basketball history. So does he have some regrets behind that? Is there a phone call made? I'm not sure. There's obviously a lot of drama surrounding Rick Pitino and what he's done off the floor over the past 10 or so years. But he's gotten this opportunity at St. John's now, and he's talked about it too in that regard. He's older. He's 71, 72 years old. He's a New Yorker. This is a cool kind of opportunity for him to revive the St. John's program. I think after he gave that speech a little bit midway through the year that they really turned it on, and they were the only team to really give UConn a game. They lost 95-90 to them in the Big East tournament. So I think he's building something nice at St. John's, and I think he's going to stay there. But I'm interested if they give him a call. And another name that is a bit of a retread in terms of college basketball is Billy Donovan, and it's a name that I definitely disagree with going to hire. Obviously, going to Florida back in the day and winning back-to-back national titles. Last night with Hurley doing it for the first time since that Florida team. Tremendous success there, but he hasn't coached in college basketball since 2015, so he's not really up to pace with the NIL, the transfer portal, and he only made it out of the first round of the NBA once. That was the first year as the head coach of the Thunder. So this is a guy that, even since he's got to the NBA, hasn't had great success. They lost him the first year, every single year after that he was there, and then since he's gone to the Bulls, they finished under 500 in 3 of the last 4 years and haven't made it past the first round there either. So he hasn't really had much success coaching. I know he's highly respected as a coach, and he's shown that he's a great basketball mind, but I think the college game has passed him a little bit, and I don't know why you're screaming to hire him. I think that he's really struggled over these past few years, and he's not really showing me anything that makes me want to think he wants that job either. I've also seen Jay Wright's thrown out there. I definitely don't think he's leaving. He's made more than enough money. He loves the area. This is where he's from, the Philadelphia area. I doubt I could see him going down to Kentucky. See too, like maybe in another year or two if he changes his mind and wants to get back into coaching. But he's been doing great on TV and seems really happy there right now. So now I guess we'll go into some more kind of realistic names that we could be calling for. And this is same thing where it's a job that I think you're going to see actually and come out and hear more guys turn it down that are actually jumping at the opportunity because they saw what Calipari did and the success that he had, but he still got kind of ran out of town. It might not have seemed that way with him leaving for Arkansas, but that was more of like kind of a, I guess, a mutual breakup there. Like it's like we didn't really want you that much anymore, but we had to pay you that big buyout. So what's it going to be? And he goes and finds his job at Arkansas. So you have to think like how much of a long leash do you really have here? Nate Oates was one of the top names kind of floated out there for a guy who's currently coaching in college basketball, obviously there in the SEC. He's got an $18 million buyout, and he released a statement last night before the game. Obviously, a statement on Twitter isn't the end all be all, but I assume they're making a call to him. But his buyout is $18 million. Just took Alabama to the Final Four. I think he's really building them into something. If Kentucky kind of botches this hire, like Alabama becoming the king of the SEC in both basketball and football, that wouldn't surprise me either. I think leaving Kentucky, obviously, he'll probably get a little bit of a pay raise there, and also maybe get some better high shelf recruits. But I think he's happy at Alabama, and I don't see him leaving there either. Another name that's been floated around, and I think he would probably be one of the better hires if he were to do this, but I just don't think I could see him leaving this, is Scott Drew at Baylor going to Kentucky. He's another guy. He's won a national championship back there in 2021. And when he got to Baylor, they were, a bottom of the barrel type of program, especially for a power conference school. He was also rumored to Louisville. He didn't jump at that opportunity. Does he maybe think twice about Kentucky? Who knows? But he's built that Baylor program from the bottom up. Like that's like his project. That's his baby. He's been there forever now. He's raised his family there. He's got wife and kids there. And they just got the whole new arena. Like this is like a program that he's really built from the. Does he want to leave that? And especially in the Big 12, where you could argue the best basketball conference in the country, do you want to leave that at probably like the second or third best program there? I think you lump Baylor right in there with Kansas and Houston at this point now. But does Scott Drew want to go? I don't think he wants to go there either. Obviously a great opportunity, but if he wasn't interested in Louisville, I don't really think I could see him being interested in Kentucky at the end of the day either. Another name I've seen getting thrown out there a little bit is Mark Pope. He's a former Kentucky player, coach at BYU now. Does he get an opportunity? Does he get a call? Maybe, if some of these top 5, top 6 guys start declining, like if their list goes, I just say in order: Dan Hurley, Nate Oates, Billy Donovan. I don't even think Pitino's on the list. Jay Wright. I assume Jay gets a call, but does he want to go for it? Mark Pope might get thrown in there kind of just because he's got that experience there. But is he ready to take that leap, especially with BYU just being in the Big 12 for 1 year? Is he ready for that opportunity? And does that really satisfy the Kentucky fans and their overall kind of vision for the program? I don't really know. So that's a name that I'm probably staying away from as well. And it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, where I think there's going to be, like, I've already named 5 or 6 guys that I don't really think will go for it or even be interested in the job. So I guess some of the names that I've been seeing and hearing that I think actually would be interested in the job and entertaining it. I look at Bruce Pearl at Auburn, another guy familiar with the conference. He built an Auburn program from a team that doesn't really have much basketball history outside of kind of Charles Barkley into a team that went to a Final Four. Obviously, they struggled this year in the tournament, losing in the first round, but they won the SEC tournament. He's built them into an SEC power. He's made that the Jungle one of the most dominant home court advantages in all of college basketball. Kentucky struggled at home at this year as well, and historically under Cal, they did really well. So that's something that I'm sure the fan base and in the athletic department want to build back up into being a nobody comes into our building type of gym and win a game there. So I think Bruce Pearl, I think he's worthy of a phone call. And he's another super high energy guy. I think that's a job or a candidate that fits kind of the need and the profile for the Kentucky job. So Bruce Pearl, I think, is a guy that's going to get a look. Another name I've been seeing, Mick Cronin at UCLA. He was open with kind of the lack of NIL money that UCLA was getting. Does he want to also leave the West Coast and kind of, I think he's set up out there he could have a pretty good run. And I don't think UCLA has nearly as much pressure as Kentucky, but he is a guy that, coaches Cincinnati. He's got these Midwest kind of ties there to Kentucky as well. And I think he has the type of personality where he's tough as shit. Like he's not going to take bullcrap from anyone. Like he'll stick up to anyone, and he won't be soft if he's getting criticized. Um, I think he would be a good fit at Kentucky, and I think once you get past some of those top names that are potentially saying no, I think Mick Cronin has to be a guy on that list as well. Brad Underwood at Illinois, I think he's another guy who he's shown he can rebuild a program. I don't, Kentucky doesn't need to be rebuilt, but he's made Illinois into a perennial Big Ten contender now, and a team that just went to the Elite Eight. He's gotten a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, and he's a guy that's shown he's not afraid to jump jobs either. I mean, 1 year I think he had at Oklahoma State, maybe 2 before jumping to Illinois. After his run at Stephen F. Austin as well, another guy with a fiery personality too. I saw Brad Stevens' name today. I heard his name. He hasn't coached in a while. He has especially in the college game. But that's a guy maybe if you're getting down to slim pickings, give him a call at least, make him say no. I know he's an executive now with the Celtics, but this is my final candidate here that I would take a look at, and I think it makes the most sense for the job at the end of the day, and that's Chris Beard at Ole Miss. I know I talked about earlier how he rejected the opportunity to go to Arkansas. I wouldn't say that's a lateral move. I'd say a little bit of a step up. And he said and his tweet was something like, "We still have unfinished business here at Ole Miss." He's not turning down the Kentucky job if they're calling him, and if they're calling and offer him, $7.5 million a year over 5 years. That's definitely a step up. And he's a guy that was kind of on that trajectory. I mean, after the off the court stuff happened and Texas let him go, he goes down. He doesn't even sit out an entire year. He gets hired in one off season here at Ole Miss. I mean, it just goes to show you, especially in the SEC, like you could have your character flaws and off the court kind of blunders, but if you win games, you're going to get hired. And he had this Ole Miss team start out really well to start the year, and then they really struggled down the stretch, but it wasn't a very talented roster. Won over 20 games with them, I believe. And he had them kind of in the tournament picture for a good majority of the season. So Chris Beard is a guy that I definitely would take a look at, and I think he's shown as well that he's definitely a riser in the coaching ranks. I mean, from Little Rock for his first D1 job to Texas Tech, taking them all the way to a national title game, and then Texas, he had them rolling last year as well before he was let go due to the dispute. So that was a really talented Texas roster that he built, a team that eventually went on and had a nice tournament run there under Rodney Terry. But that was a roster comprised of players that Chris Beard put together. You give him the resources at Kentucky, you give him everything that he needs. He's as good as an X and O coach, big game type coach. Like if it's a tie game and we're going down to the last 4 minutes, you're going to have to probably 4 to 5 guys that I would think about taking over him. I mean, I think he's that good of an in-game coach. And if you give him all those resources as well that he needs to recruit, I think he's a home run hire for Kentucky if he does wind up getting the job. And I think he's definitely on that list. If there's just say a list of 10 and you get past, if just say the top 3 was Dan Hurley, Nate Oates, and then Scott Drew, and they say no, like I think Chris Beard has to be one of your next phone calls. If you get past what he's done off the court, and I don't obviously know everything about the situation, but the charges were dropped. He wasn't officially charged with anything, so I don't think you're getting any hurdles with that anymore. And he coached this whole year at Ole Miss, and there weren't any problems, and they didn't have any problems before what happened last year at Texas. But he's as good as a coach in college basketball, I think, as you can find these days, X's and O's wise, and in terms of getting his players better. I think he's a top 4 or 5 coach there in the game, and I think that would be a great replacement there for John Calipari at Kentucky. So obviously really intrigued to see how this entire scenario plays out. It was a crazy kind of domino effect to get here. And then even once they hire a new coach, if they do hire a Scott Drew, if they do hire a Nate Oates, if they do hire a Chris Beard, a Mick Cronin, somebody's going to have to take one of those bigger jobs as well. So the dominoes are going to keep falling, but as soon as this hire comes official, John Calipari officially becomes Arkansas coach, and then whoever Kentucky winds up hiring, which I would assume is in the next few days, I think that'll be definitely worthy of another episode here and breaking down what the future of Kentucky basketball looks like. But that'll do it for here on the Beef Up Front podcast on Pick Swap Media. Streaming this a little after 7:10. My phone didn't really blow up much, so I think nobody's been hired yet. But as always, thank you everyone for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and we'll talk soon.